Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. You know it, I'm Dan Wootton. Tonight, as the baying media and political mob continue in its attempt to unseat our democratically elected Prime Minister, I'll explain why Boris Johnson must ditch his manifesto-busting tax hike to save himself and the country. That's in my digest. Then my superstar panel will give their verdict tonight. It's the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the Iron newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the social commentator Esther Kraku. It's not the only struggle the PM is facing as he goes to war with Whitehall's slob blob, who have vowed to work from home forever. But should the PM force civil servants back into the office? Entrepreneur Charlie Mullins thinks they should lead by example, but businesswoman and former Apprentice star Jessica Cunningham believes it should be a personal choice. They'll go head-to-head in the clash at 9:20. But with more so-called Partygate revelations breaking tonight and the Sue Gray report looming, will Boris even see out the week as PM? I don't think we should write him off yet, but we'll have all the latest. As the issue of trans athletes is thrust back into the spotlight, Olympic gold medalist and the world's most famous trans woman, Caitlyn Jenner, joins me for a world-exclusive interview, warning that the likes of swimmer Leah Thomas are doing more damage to the trans community with their success. You won't want to miss that at 10:20. After thousands, let me tell you, not hundreds, took to the streets at the weekend to protest compulsory jabs for NHS workers.
80,000 health workers remain unvaccinated. Hundreds of people marched in cities across England to protest
Poor
against
BBC
the policy.
can't count. There were thousands and thousands.
Why did the BBC downplay the size of the demonstration against the immoral no jab, no job mandate for our NHS heroes? GB News star Neil Oliver has led the fight for morality throughout the pandemic. He stands up against malicious medical mandates in The Outsider at 9:45. As Jacinda Ardern's cruel and dangerous zero-COVID obsession takes its most deluded turn yet, when will the woke authoritarian wake up and join the rest of the world in living with the virus? Star Sky News Australia presenter Rita Panahi sounds off on damaging Kiwi isolationism, which has kept me apart from my loved ones for 2 years. So it's deeply personal to me. We'll discuss that in Uncancelled at 10:40. After Boris Johnson delivered this stark warning to Vladimir Putin and his troops on the Ukrainian border,
invading Ukraine from a Russian perspective is going to be a painful, violent and bloody business.
Darren Grimes explains why Britain's bold stance against Russian aggression is yet another Brexit benefit. That's at 9:30. Has a university's trigger warning for George Orwell's 1984 totally missed the message of the timeless dystopian novel. That and more of today's top headlines in the media buzz. Plus, first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages as they drop, and we'll reveal the greatest Briton and Union Jackass before the show is out. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. Just one thing first, though. Congratulations to the Mail on Sunday newspaper that this weekend became the first to formally scrap reporting of daily and weekly COVID statistics. The numbers game has been an obsession of the BBC, as you know, for the past 22 months, at great cost to the national psyche and at great cost to perspective, too, on how to battle the coronavirus pandemic. As soon as the death toll dropped, the Beebs started their daily tally of case numbers to continue the scaremongering. But as we learn to live with COVID-19, the case numbers are only relevant if we also display the daily numbers of flu cases, of cancer diagnoses, of heart attacks, of strokes and of suicides. As the Mail on Sunday editor Dave Dillon put it, this is a significant moment in our coverage of the pandemic. As the Health Secretary has said, it is now time for us to learn to live with COVID. For this reason, and because it has been shown that the figures are increasingly misleading, we no longer see the need to keep a running tally. As I revealed on the show last week, an FOI request to the ONS revealed the UK has experienced just 17,371 recorded deaths, where COVID was the sole cause over the course of the pandemic. You certainly won't be seeing the daily tallies of fear on this show, and well done to the Mail on Sunday for leading the charge in print. My digest coming up very shortly, some advice to Boris Johnson. Here's the first look at tonight's superstar panel. The Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the iNewspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the social commentator Esther Krakuth. They'll take me on in just a moment, but first, the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Thanks, Dan. The latest headlines this hour. Number 10 has this evening confirmed staff did gather in the Cabinet room at Number 10 to mark the Prime Minister's 56th birthday on the 19th of June 2020. That was during the first lockdown. According to an ITV News report, up to 30 people are alleged to have attended the event, which was organised by the Prime Minister's wife, Carrie. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister said he attended the gathering for less than 10 minutes. Later that evening, Number 10 confirmed a second event was held, with the Prime Minister hosting a small number of family members outside within COVID rules at the time, denying ITV News versions of events that the event was held indoors. In international news tonight, the United States says it has put troops on heightened readiness to deploy as tensions continue to rise in Europe. Russia has over 100,000 troops at its border with Ukraine, but denies it's planning an invasion. But the Pentagon says up to 8,500 US-based troops are at a new alert status. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said military plans were being fine-tuned to meet the Ukraine scenario.
We have been consulting with allies in deployments and refining plans for all scenarios. We've always said we would reinforce our allies on the eastern flank, and those conversations and discussions have certainly been part of what our national security officials have been discussing with their counterparts now for several weeks. In fact, we've never ruled out the option of providing additional assistance in advance of an invasion.
Jen Psaki at the White House. Well, the Transport Secretary has announced that post-travel testing in England will be scrapped from the 11th of February. That's ahead of the half-term school holidays. Speaking in the House of Commons this afternoon, Grant Shapps said that double-vaccinated passengers arriving in the UK will no longer need to take a lateral flow test. Shapps also said travel testing has outlived its usefulness, as Britain is now one of the most vaccinated countries in the world.
Today, I can confirm to the House, Mr. Speaker, that our international travel regime will also now be liberalised as part of our efforts to ensure that 2022 is the year in which restrictions on travel, on lockdowns and limits on people's lives are firmly placed in the past.
Grant Shapps. In the United States, 3 former police officers who were on the scene of George Floyd's murder in May 2020 are on trial. They're accused of violating Mr. Floyd's civil rights by failing to provide medical care when fellow officer Derek Chauvin knelt on his neck for more than 9 minutes. Chauvin received a sentence of 22.5 years for George Floyd's murder. 2 of the officers also charged with failing to stop Chauvin. On TV, online and through your radio on DAB+, you're with GB News. Now more from Dan Wootton, and tonight.
Boris Johnson remains tonight on political death row, awaiting the results of the Sue Gray Partygate inquiry. And while the Ramones, the Keir Starmer for Prime Minister Brigade and Tory troublemakers are baying for blood, I take a much more nuanced position. Now is not the time for Boris to go. He must lead the UK out of the pandemic and I think be given a chance to really to rediscover his lustre in peacetime, you might say. As you know, I backed Boris to become Prime Minister as I believed he was the only man who could deliver Brexit. That proved to be true. But he has had a disastrous pandemic where he gave in to the media, scientific and political establishment, doing huge damage to the country in the process. And sadly, he's also given in far too often to his wife, Carrie, who has pushed Boris to reinvent the Tories into a big state, high-tax party, slavishly supporting the net zero agenda and rolling back personal liberties. For that, I have been furious. You know I have. And I've cheered on the brave Tory rebels, the likes of Mark Harper and Steve Baker and the even braver cabinet defector Lord Frost, who have helped Boris to rediscover his backbone these past 2 months. That's before I even get to the boozy number 10 parties while we were all locked in our homes at threat of arrest, which frankly beg a belief, and prove once and for all that inhumane and draconian lockdown policies should always have been guidance and not law. But Boris has a chance to save himself. There is no successor ready, waiting in the wings. None of the main contenders are anywhere near ready for a bruising leadership contest, let alone with a prepared agenda to run the country. And up until recent polls, Boris has proven to be an electoral asset. But if he has any chance of surviving as PM, and I have to be honest, that is looking more difficult by the day, Boris must make some bold calls. The first and the most urgent priority is to scrap the national insurance increase due for April, that so-called health and social care levy. It's unthinkable to me, completely unthinkable, that in the midst of an unprecedented cost of living crisis, he is proposing a manifesto-busting tax hike when record funds are already being pumped into the NHS. The PM's discomfort on the issue was obvious today as he was pressed on the matter in this interview.
You guarantee that national insurance will go up in April this year as planned?
What we've got to do is look at all the ways we can address cost of living.
That doesn't sound like a guarantee.
All we can do to address the cost of living issues for people. So it's the cost of fuel. It's making sure. And just on that specific issue.
But on the tax rise, can you guarantee that national insurance will go up?
This is what I'm saying. What I'm telling you is we've got to put that money in.
Will that money come through a national insurance rise?
Those machines are not cheap. Those machines are not cheap. 44,000 more staff in our NHS.
But will the money come through a national insurance rise?
Now than there were last year. Those investments are not cheap. What I'm telling people is that if you want to fund our fantastic NHS, we have to pay for it. And this government is determined to do so.
It's no surprise Boris is feeling the pressure. The Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, is trying to wash his hands of the unpopular £12 billion tax grab that will cost a worker on a £30,000 salary £255 a year. Leading economic think tank, the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, says reversing the hike is absolutely possible and makes a lot of sense. Former Tory Cabinet Minister Robert Jenner wrote in the Daily Telegraph that postponing the rise would show that the government's conservative instincts remain intact. And the Daily Mail, campaigning for the 1.25% hike to go, quoted an anonymous minister today saying the whole cabinet would support such a move. But that must just be the start if Boris is to survive. He must also axe VAT and green levies on energy bills. They need to go. If Boris were to make such a dramatic statement on a key policy plank like low tax in the week of the Sue Gray report, then I believe many wavering Tories might agree the PM deserves one more go. Just do it, Boris. Just do it. This could actually be your last chance to save yourself. To respond now, my superstar panel, the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the social commentator Esther Kraku. Carol Malone, do you agree with me that they just have to scrap this national insurance rise?
Yeah, entirely. You know, this tax grab could capsize not just the economy, but particularly Boris as well. This is entirely the wrong moment to do this. You know, inflation is at a 30-year high. We've got mortgages rising. The fuel bills are going to rocket in April by another 50%. This will finish some families. This will be the end for many families. And, you know, it could tip us into a recession. You know, it would hit employers and employees alike, which would mean loss of jobs, which would mean pay freezes. You know, what lies ahead if he doesn't do this is actually terrifying. And you're right. I think this, you know, governments can't do anything about global fuel costs or energy costs, but it is entirely in control of taxes. And this is what he should be doing now, forgetting these taxes. And yes, I know we need money for the social care, and I've been banging on about that for years. I know we need money for the NHS, but that's going to take years to fix. So not right now. Let people get through the cost of living crisis first, then we'll go.
But Esther, you say Boris Johnson actually needs to stick to his guns.
My issue with this is, look, I'm a Conservative. No Conservative likes an increase in taxes, but this doesn't stem from, you know, just needing to... This stems from crashing our economy into a brick wall for these lockdowns that didn't have the kind of support it needed to actually go forward. This doesn't come from the fact that he just wants to increase taxes. It comes from the fact that the lockdowns were far too long, it cost our economy too much, and now we have to pay it back. And this... Which,
by the way, folk like me and folk like you were warning was always going to be the consequence.
Exactly, and it's not... And they say, oh, how else are we going to pay for the NHS? Well, if we didn't put our economy in the state, this wouldn't be a question, right? And these are just one of the many taxes that we're going to have to...
Can we stop just blaming coronavirus when we talk about this? We have to start blaming lockdowns.
And the politicians.
It's the lockdowns and the hysterical reaction to the coronavirus pandemic that has led us here. But Benjamin Butterworth is interesting because you Labour lot, you want taxes up, apart from in this case.
Well, I mean, that's not true. The last time there was a Labour government, taxes were much lower than they have been under the last 12 years.
Well, Starmer wants significant tax rises.
I mean, first of all, you know, it's not true to say that this social care levy, the 1.25%, is a consequence of the lockdown.
It is.
It's specifically to fund the social care sector and not the NHS.
Well, in the long term, but to begin with, it's to deal with the NHS backlog. That is a fact.
I think it's wrong to say that if we hadn't had a pandemic that this wouldn't be necessary. Now, I actually totally agree that now is not the time to introduce this, because I think when you've got gas prices rising and food prices rising, you know, it's simply, you know, the basis of people's finances is not in a good place. And if I were the Chancellor or the Prime Minister, I would delay it by a year. But you can't get around the fact that this is needed to pay for social care. What I think is a disgrace is that pensioners who make an income, have jobs and maybe get money from shares and all the rest of it and rent, that they don't pay any national insurance. I think that's unjustifiable.
Oh, how dare those pensioners
people who pay
make some money to pay for their
all their lives.
I'm not talking about a postponement, Carol Malone. I'm not talking about a postponement. I know Benjamin is, I know Robert Jenner is. For me, this is a fundamental issue. Yeah. Boris, in his manifesto, said we will cut taxes if he wants to win back the base of the party, if he wants to win back his backbenchers, who, let's be honest, hold his political future in their hands, in their hot little hands right now. He's got to say it's gone for good.
Now, as you pointed out, every cabinet minister is in agreement that this should be pushed back. And I think Boris is kind of... He cares enough about his own self-preservation.
Yes, we know that.
I'm not entirely sure he cares about the people, lots of people in the country who might be in dire straits come April, but he certainly cares enough about self-preservation.
He wants to stay Prime Minister.
He wants to stay Prime Minister. So, yeah, I think it's very likely that he'll do it because the alternative will be catastrophic. You know, Boris has never lived in poverty, but there are people in this country they will have to make that choice between heating and eating, and that's a disgrace in the 21st century. But that is how it will be for some families. Yeah, so he has to knock it back.
And Esther, people voted for the Tories under a manifesto that was pledging to cut taxes.
Well, and mainly to get us out of the EU. But, you know, I'm really hoping that Boris is not holding on to this dream, that he can still hold on to the red wall because he thinks he was some sort of revolutionary that suddenly become appealing or made the Tory party appealing to the red wall. That's just not going to happen. You need to appeal to your base. You need to do what you were voted in for, and he needs to get rid of all these delusions, the green levies, all of these things. This is not what a Conservative government looks like. I'm sorry.
Well, but dare I say, actually, in the Red Wall, they quite like these kind of economic approaches.
They do.
It's a very different type of person. But can I just pick up something you said in your digest, and you just reiterated?
I think they like the big spending. I certainly don't think in the Red Wall they're plumping for green levies on energy.
No, or increasing taxes.
You said that if he gets rid of this social care levy, well, then he should stay. What a dangerous statement to say that if he does what you want, then all the standards of public life and all the lives
if he cares for the country. And
what a low expectation of our government. You should want someone else to do that.
Benjamin, do you know what?
Let someone get away with
do you know what,
being a
Benjamin?
liar.
Do you know what I don't want? I don't want folk like you, the liberal elite who run the newspapers.
I'm
the
not the
liberal elite.
liberal
Let me
elite.
finish, Benjamin. Let me finish. Yes, you are. You absolutely are.
Oh, well, I
You're a
wish I had as much
quinoa
as you.
quaffing, champagne scoffing member of the liberal elite.
I don't
and you know
even
what?
like champagne.
I refuse to stand by and watch the newspaper, the BBC, ITV News, Sky News and LBC run our Prime Minister out of office. I will wait for the inquiry. I will wait for the inquiry. I will not allow the media to drive Boris Johnson out. And look, that's a view that some people, even on this channel, don't agree with.
For our Prime Minister.
Can
I just quickly say, I spent the last 2 weeks going to Red Wall, safe Tory seats, Lib Dem leading seats.
I'm sure they loved you.
Asking people what they thought. And you know what? Almost without exception, including in places like Middlesbrough and Hartlepool, they were furious at this Prime Minister. More people who voted
Hang
Tory
on,
were
okay,
furious.
so let me know. Listen,
I'm the one that was challenging the Prime Minister over lockdowns for 2 years when you were nodding the whole thing through and saying that these lockdowns were a good thing. So for you to say that I haven't challenged the Prime Minister when I disagree with him, but I'm not going to allow folk like you, the London Liberal elite, to decide if the Prime Minister should go.
But you made a very important point before where you said there is no one waiting in the wings to replace him, and that is my worry. If there was someone I thought was great for this country, who was great for the Tories,
well, there is, but he just can't define what a woman is.
No, they can't, because the two contenders, Sunak and Liz Truss, not good enough.
Keir Starmer, he can't define what a woman is.
I'm not talking. We're talking about people in the Tories who are waiting to take his place. I don't mean Labour. I mean the Tories. There are no big contenders to take Boris's place, and that worries me. Get rid of one, get another. It's not the X factor. Get them out after a few months because you don't like them.
There are no Conservatives in the Conservative government. That's the
point. The country is against Boris Johnson, and you're deluded
for now.
Otherwise.
Is it, Benjamin? OK. Well, I'll believe you and I'll believe the pollsters who got Brexit wrong, who got the Red Wall wrong. Look, I think what was going on at number 10 Downing Street over the course of the lockdown while we were all locked in our homes is shameful and it is shocking. And I've never said anything other than that. But I will not allow the media elite in this country to think that they can dictate when our democratically elected Prime Minister should go. That is up to the Tory party, that is up to the backbench MPs, and that's why I'm saying Boris Johnson needs to change his policy approach to try and win them over, because we don't need the turmoil of Boris going right now. You know who wants the turmoil? The Labour Party. The BBC, ITV News, Sky News. They want the turmoil. I want Boris Johnson to lead us out of this pandemic and do what he promised. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, Esther Krakow. They're here all night. Still to come, as Boris Johnson warns Vladimir Putin that a Russian invasion of Ukraine would be bloody and violent for his troops. Find out why GBNews presenter Darren Grimes thinks his ability to take a bold stance is another Brexit benefit. But up next, is Boris right to force civil servants back to the office as Whitehall slob blob pledged to work from home forever? Entrepreneur Charlie Mullins and businesswoman and former apprentice star Jessica Cunningham do battle over that in the clash. As ever, your view's the most important to me, though. dan@gbnews.uk is my email, or you can tweet me @gbnews. We've got a poll running there too. I'll bring you the results straight after the break.
Good evening. A remarkably similar day tomorrow. It's again going to be cold. If anything, probably feeling a little colder than today. Grey skies for the majority, but not much rain around. Main exception to the dry story will be across the northwest of Scotland, where we do have these weak weather fronts. High pressure has been dominating, and under it we've got a lot of cloud trapped, and it's not really shifting very far because the winds are light. We've seen some breaks in the cloud over northeast England, eastern Scotland, and if we keep those breaks tonight, we could easily see temperatures dropping below freezing. But even where it's cloudy, it's going to turn quite cold. Temperatures dropping down close to freezing zero there in Hull, 1 in Cardiff. A little milder in the far northwest, where there will be some showery rain at times across the Highlands and the Northern Isles. That rain likely to pep up a little bit later on Tuesday. Elsewhere, it's again a rather drab but largely dry day. We should see some breaks in the cloud across Aberdeenshire. Again, northeast England may see a bit of sunshine, but for most it will be a grey day. And temperatures lower than today's. Look at that, only 3 or 4 in Birmingham and London. Again, the top temperature probably Aberdeenshire with some sunshine here, 9 or 10 is possible. A little more rain will trickle southwards across Scotland during the evening, but bar the odd bit of drizzle for Glasgow, not a lot else. A few showers continuing in the far north of Scotland, where it will be breezy, but elsewhere the wind's light. We keep a lot of clouds, and that will help to stop too much frost for Wednesday. Wednesday's a similar day, perhaps a little bit brighter, a better chance of seeing a few glimmers of sunshine. But then also we're going to see a bit more rain coming in across the Western Isles and the Highlands, and that's going to be quite heavy, and that will swing across Scotland during Wednesday evening with strengthening winds as well. So the wind's really getting lively on Wednesday night from this area of low pressure, very blustery in the far north. This weather front moves across the country before high pressure moves back in to bring most of us a dry end to the week.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Darren Grimes and Neil Oliver on the way, but time now for the clash. He's been in the wars, but Boris Johnson isn't too battle-scarred to launch another attack. This time on what I'm dubbing the Westminster slob blob. Yep, the PM has finally ordered civil servants back to the office as tens of thousands of commuters return to the nation's towns and cities today, as detailed on the front page of the Evening Standard in the capital. Now, I salute each and every one of these folk, even though some of them must have been devastated, completely devastated to leave their Peloton bikes and their pyjamas and watching Loose Women at lunchtime. You know the drill. But the civil service has fought back. Pathetically, the FDA union, which represents senior members of the blob, suggested the world has permanently changed. Its General Secretary, Dave Penman, said It's not a health and safety thing. It just doesn't make any sense. Ministers have made it this kind of culture war. So, is Boris Johnson right to force civil servants back to the office as they pledge to work from home forever? You can email me at dan@gbnews.uk, tweet me at GBNews, and I'll bring you the results of our poll on this straight after two business brains with completely opposing views. Charlie Mullins, OBE, entrepreneur and founder of Pimlico Plumbers, and Jessica Cunningham, the businesswoman and former star of The Apprentice, join me now to battle it out. Charlie, I just can't believe that these civil servants think that they can work from home forever. Why? Why should they be allowed to do that?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, they've been on full pay and been doing a fraction of their work. So why would they want to go back to work? Boris needs I think Boris is at the situation now where he's, very much stay or go, and he needs to step it up and lead by example and really encourage them back there. I mean, they need to be back in the workplace. They haven't been efficient working from home. They're not in the real world. And, the end of the day, we need to, civil service needs to be at the front line. And we need to, get rid of this stupid work from home nonsense and maybe call it work less from home.
I mean, Jessica, you must accept that folk working from home simply don't do the hard yards. They walk the dog, they make their lunch, they turn on loose women and they watch it in their underwear. They have a little stint on the Peloton bike. That's the reality, Jessica.
You see, I completely disagree. All of my team work from home, and when I had the office, I found myself going in, coming out, especially when everything hit, and my office and the team, it didn't work for me. Whereas now I'm making the most money I've ever earned. I've got a really, really reliable, strong team, and they do the work that I pay them to do. But also as well, I think you mentioned there, Charlie, about stats and facts. Like, are there stats and facts to say that the civil servants aren't actually working, or is that an assumption?
Charlie?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go on, say that again. I can't believe what I just heard. Say it again.
I'll repeat it, don't worry. So what you're saying is, you're saying that people, when they work from home, they don't actually do the work. What's that based on?
Well, it's on common sense. I mean, it's not difficult, is it?
Not my common sense, because my team do my work. So what is that actually based on?
Look, lady, don't worry about the facts. Worry about common sense, right? It's human instinct.
Well,
if you're
that's the common sense. They're different things. You can have common sense. My team work for me, and they work from their home.
OK, no, I hear your point, Jess. Let Charlie respond.
What I'm trying to say is that they're all going to say they're more productive, right? Of course they're going to be more productive. They're more productive. The washing gets done. The gardening gets done. The decorating gets done. They meet up. Come on, look, you're in the real world. You're in the real world. I mean, maybe they should bring their slippers into work and feel more at home. They need to get out of their pyjamas, get back to work, get the country moving, inspire everybody in the workplace to get the economy going. Can I ask you a question, lady? What's your name, Jessica?
Jessica.
Yeah.
Jessica, how many people you employ?
6, so not as many as you, but again, I would disagree that all home workers are working gold dollars.
Sure, but what I'm trying to say is you're comparing your 6 with the government that employ thousands of people. We need them people back at work. We need them to be more efficient, and we need Boris to step it up and lead the country back into the great city that we are.
Yeah, and Jessica, do you also understand that there is a point about society as well? This isn't just about individual workers, it's about the good of Britain, because while these lazy civil servants stay at home, they're actually running lots of other businesses into the ground. The coffee shops that rely on foot traffic, for example.
What about the local shops, though? And also, if you look at everything, now you're mentioning that there's going to be massive price increases. So I understand about getting the economy, I understand about getting the economy back out there. But also, things have changed. Like, people are used to different ways of working and different ways of managing stuff. But does that mean that they're not actually doing the work? If they're not doing the work, surely they lose the job.
Charlie, do you think there's anything positive that people could have learned from the pandemic? For example, a bit of remote working.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, for some people, it's going to be definitely an advantage. And people that perhaps really struggle and got under health problems and they need to work from home, there's that option. But we can't have the majority of people working from home.
I think there should be. I think it should be more of a personal choice.
But Jess, the big issue when you're talking about civil servants, though, because Jess, when it comes to you, you are there running your own business, and if your staff aren't working for you, then you'll probably get rid of them because you've got to make money. Now, when it comes to these lazy civil servants, they are guaranteed an income. They are guaranteed a job, and very few of them ever get sacked.
Are they not guaranteed the income for doing the work? Like, surely, I think maybe I'm looking at it from an employee point of view, because if someone doesn't do the work for me, they do go.
But Charlie, we know how the blob operates, don't we, Charlie? And they look after their own.
Of course, in the real world, as Dan said, they've got no jeopardy of their job. They've got a job for life. They're not worried about the situation. They'll be getting the full pay for a fraction of the work they've been doing. People are going to lose their jobs if the civil servants don't get back to work. Every person that works from home, somebody's going to lose their job.
Final word to you, Jess?
What do you mean? For every civil servant that works at home, someone's going to lose their job, in the sense of because people aren't going to coffee shops? But again, you could argue the same thing for going to look. Go on.
No, you're taking that out of perspective. What I'm saying to you, that every person that works from home, somebody will lose their job, because whether it be coffee shops, stores, whether it be schools, there's people. You need people to have a knock on effect. I mean, come on, Jess. What's this program been apprenticed? Was you in that?
Yeah.
Or something. Well, look, you've got to have a bit of
Yeah, but that's not my business.
No, but I'm trying to say, you're messing about it. You're having a wind-up, right? You know that there's no better place than the workplace. They signed a contract to go to work. Go to work in every world. I mean, like man up kind of thing.
I think in some states, in some situations, yes, be with people, be in an office. But in other situations, not everyone needs to return back to work. And
okay, well, let's start with them lazy bastards, then the civil servants, then, right? They need to go back to work. End story. Oh, go on.
I think you need to drop the mic, yeah? I'm done.
Okay, well, look, great discussion. Sorry, we're having a little bit of trouble with your line, but thank you so much to Charlie Mullins, the entrepreneur, founder of Pimlico Plumbers, and Jessica Cunningham, the businesswoman and former Apprentice star. So who do you agree with? This is going to be an interesting one. Graham, via Twitter, says they get the best pay and pension, so if they don't return, sack them. There are plenty of others who will do their jobs. I agree. Terry, also via Twitter, we are adopting hybrid working at my department. One of the main problems in our department was overcrowding. We are one of, and air quality issues. Windows are glued shut. Was simply a case of not being able to make office safe. Happy to go back on a hybrid basis. And Gabby, via email, says, yes, Boris needs to get the civil servants back to the office like everybody else. If they do want to work from home, then they should get a pay cut. And your verdict is now in. 86% of you agree with me and Charlie Mullins that civil service workers should be forced back to the office by Boris Johnson. Boom. Just 14% of you want them at home, on their Peloton bikes, in their boxer shorts, wanting loose women. Get back to work, folks. Do you know what? It's so great going back to work because you get to chat to your friends. You get to go to the pub at lunchtime. You get to have that lovely lunch. We need to change our mindset. It's not natural to be trapped in our homes all day working. Coming up, why did the BBC downplay the size of the demonstration against the immoral NHS no jab, no job mandate? GBNews star Neil Oliver weighs in as tonight's outsider. But next, has Brexit allowed the UK to get tough on Russia? And will fighting talk be enough to prevent war in the Ukraine? Darren Grimes breaks down the turmoil in Eastern Europe straight after the break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Neil Oliver on the way, but first, as war looks increasingly likely, Boris Johnson has warned Vladimir Putin that invading Ukraine would be a painful, violent and bloody business.
The intelligence is very clear that there are 60 Russian battle groups, about 60 Russian battle groups on the borders of Ukraine. The plan for a lightning war that could take out Kiev is one that everybody can see. We need to make it very clear to the Kremlin, to Russia, that that would be a disastrous step. And so what we're saying is that the UK is leading on creating a package of economic sanctions, working with our partners around the world. I'll be talking to them this afternoon, this evening, talking to colleagues in other capitals and in Washington. But we also need to get over the message that invading Ukraine from a Russian perspective is going to be a painful, violent and bloody business. And I think it's very important that people in Russia understand that this could be a new Chechnya.
Very strong stuff from Boris there, a strong performance from the embattled PM. The UK has pulled staff from its embassy in Kiev amid warnings the Kremlin would face harsh sanctions should its troops cross the border. Russia has around 100,000 troops around Ukraine, and NATO has been putting forces on standby in the region. Let me bring in Darren Grimes now, who's been analysing this perilous situation and has a theory as to why some of our European allies have been reluctant to stick the boot into Putin. Darren, just how close are we to war here, and why aren't some of the nations on the continent being anywhere near as strong on Russia as Boris was today?
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Dan. I mean, you're right to say 8,500 American units tonight as we speak being placed on heightened preparedness to be deployed in Ukraine. And meanwhile, Dan, what you say about the PM there, I completely agree. He was great in that clip that we've just seen. But Twitter right now is awash with people discussing Boris Johnson cutting a cake with his wife Carrie and an interior designer. I mean, it does put things in perspective somewhat, talking about Ukraine. But I'm actually really concerned about the rhetoric, some of the rhetoric that we're hearing, especially from American liberals, right, discussing Brexit Britain. I've just watched CNN, Dan, where the former David Miliband, Ed Miliband's brother, he was saying that actually what we're seeing is a more isolationist and an alone Britain during this crisis. And I have to say, I've never heard more sneering anti-British sentiment since I watched BBC News. Honestly, it was extraordinary. Because the opposite is true, Dan. The polar opposite is true. The way I see it is that actually one of the strongest nations, whilst doddery old Biden is on the sidelines, one of the strongest nations is the United Kingdom right now. Germany refuses to supply Ukraine with weapons and has been actively, by the way, which will be shocking to some viewers, actively preventing Estonia from helping Ukraine. As they say, we actually send our anti-tank weapons and we're going around Germany, even though the fastest route would be to fly directly over Germany. And there are reports, Dan, that actually the reason for this is that the British government don't want to ask Germany because it could be embarrassing for their administration to have to actually reject the request. And you might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, why on earth would Germany want to embolden Russia that is out for land grab, essentially? And it all comes down to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is a gas pipeline, which is pumping gas. It's not yet pumping gas, but it plans to pump gas from Russia to Europe. Now, Putin is actually using Ukraine, hoping Ukraine rolls over, and actually using the German response here to approve this pipeline. Because more shockingly of all, Germans have actually refused to say, Dan, that they'd suspend this pipeline if Russia does actually invade Ukraine. And that, to me, is utterly damning. Because, well, I mean, maybe we needn't be surprised. Germany abandoned its NATO spending commitment of 2% of GDP on defence, expecting others, frankly, to take care and pay for their defence, the defence of Europe. You compare them with the likes of Lithuania, by the way, bravely standing up against Chinese bullying over the former Soviet nation allowing Taiwan to open an office in its country. You compare them with Ukraine as it stands against a Russian bear that is on its doorstep, bravely standing up for its own nationhood. And I think Germany's response is, frankly, slightly disgusting. And perhaps most tellingly of all, you go back to all these Brexit debates, Dan. Remember, people like me were smeared, people like Nigel Farage, people like Aaron Banks, were smeared with allegations of being stooges for the Russians, and that we were told that Brexit would actually help the Russian state.
Hardly.
Well, look at those. Yeah, exactly.
No.
All those
Very
who
good
dare
analysis,
push
Darren.
these conspiracy theories.
Very good analysis on all of this. But I want to bring this back to politics, local politics. When you look at all of that, surely that is why we cannot, as a country, allow for a Tory leadership contest right now. More important things are going on. I know you've been very tough on Boris for good reason, but when you look at what's happening in the Ukraine, do you not think this is a reason for us to all just simmer down and let Boris sort this out?
I think the opposite of that. I think right now we need a serious person in number 10. I think right now we need a serious government in office.
Like a Liz Truss? A Liz Truss?
Well,
would you like her?
I don't know who. I'm not gonna, go out.
You're not going to show your hand
up
as
on the
you.
ballot. Exactly. I'm not. But we need serious government because these are serious times, Dan.
Okay, Darren Grimes, excellent. Now, exciting news. I believe your new show launches this weekend. Am I right?
It does indeed. It does. 2 p.m. on Saturday, Real Britain. So I hope everyone follows me over from this show, Dan, from your brilliant show, and joins me every Saturday and Sunday, 2 p.m.
Oh, my goodness. I will be watching, Darren Grimes. Good luck, and we'll speak again.
Thank you.
Coming up, will allegations of Boris Johnson's illicit birthday party, as we were just discussing, seal his fate, or be greeted with a big shrug? Have to be honest, I'm not concerned about the PM getting a cake on his birthday. I'm not. But my panel will weigh in, and we'll also see how tomorrow's newspapers have covered the story in the media buzz. That's from 10. But next, did the BBC make its COVID bias more blatant than ever with its coverage of the protests against NHS vaccine mandates? I say hell yes, and I have a feeling GBNews star Neil Oliver might disagree with me. He's the outsider. Here straight after the break.
Good evening. A remarkably similar day tomorrow. It's again going to be cold. If anything, probably feeling a little colder than today. Grey skies for the majority, but not much rain around. Main exception to the dry story will be across the northwest of Scotland, where we do have these weak weather fronts. High pressure has been dominating, and under it we've got a lot of cloud trapped, and it's not really shifting very far because the winds are light. We've seen some breaks in the cloud over northeast England, eastern Scotland, and if we keep those breaks tonight, we could easily see temperatures dropping below freezing. But even where it's cloudy, it's going to turn quite cold. Temperatures dropping down close to freezing zero there in Hull, 1 in Cardiff. A little milder in the far northwest, where there will be some showery rain at times across the Highlands and the Northern Isles. That rain likely to pep up a little bit later on Tuesday. Elsewhere, it's again a rather drab but largely dry day. We should see some breaks in the cloud across Aberdeenshire. Again, northeast England may see a bit of sunshine, but for most it will be a grey day. And temperatures lower than today's. Look at that, only 3 or 4 in Birmingham and London. Again, the top temperature probably Aberdeenshire with some sunshine here, 9 or 10 is possible. A little more rain will trickle southwards across Scotland during the evening, but bar the odd bit of drizzle for Glasgow, not a lot else. A few showers continuing in the far north of Scotland, where it will be breezy, but elsewhere the wind's light. We keep a lot of clouds, and that will help to stop too much frost for Wednesday. Wednesday's a similar day, perhaps a little bit brighter, a better chance of seeing a few glimmers of sunshine. But then also we're going to see a bit more rain coming in across the Western Isles and the Highlands, and that's going to be quite heavy, and that will swing across Scotland during Wednesday evening with strengthening winds as well. So the wind's really getting lively on Wednesday night from this area of low pressure, very blustery in the far north. This weather front moves across the country before high pressure moves back in to bring most of us a dry end to the week.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Caitlyn Jenner and Rita Panahi on the way, but Neil Oliver is tonight's outsider. This weekend, brave advocates for personal freedom and defenders of the frontline heroes who gave their all for us throughout the pandemic marched across the UK in support of the NHS 100k, an initiative backing the health service workers who are set to lose their jobs on April the 1st due to their unvaccinated status. Seems like a worthy endeavour, right? Well, the BBC thought otherwise, majorly downplaying how many people were at the march in London in order to protect their COVID narrative.
Around 80,000 health workers remain unvaccinated. Hundreds of people marched in cities across England to protest
Poor
against
BBC
the policy.
can't count. There were thousands and
plans
thousands
Here's
of
Catherine
people
de
there
Costa.
today. Thousands.
Hundreds of healthcare
Hundreds
workers
again. My
London,
goodness,
calling
they
for the
really do
government's
need help with their
no jab,
maths,
no
don't they, at the
policy in
BBC?
England.
That's the voice of our furious Tonya Buxton there. Look, they say hundreds marched against vaccine mandates, but this time-lapse video, which continues for 2 whole minutes, suggests they are completely wrong. Despite the protests, there's still mixed reports as to whether the government is going to delay the decision, with Downing Street playing down claims that unvaccinated workers will get another 6 months. Look, there are the hundreds of people, Neil, the hundreds of people. I've never seen so many hundreds of people go on and on and on like this. Why is it, Neil, that the BBC seems so determined to pump out disinformation when it comes to the marches against these no jab, no job policies?
I find it frankly inexplicable. I cannot really. I think unless you're privy to the decision making within the BBC and BBC News, I don't think there's any way to rationalise what they seem to be doing. It's so self-defeating to me because of the effectiveness of social media, that so many people can see footage that of the sort that you just referred to and just showed, a 2-minute lapse of time lapse of all those people moving about. Why the BBC would think that it can continue to say otherwise, as I say, just seems self-defeating. I can see no logic in it. How else can you interpret it but just sheer bloody mindedness that they're in support of a government narrative and that they will do anything and everything to continue to push that line. And at all times, people who are in any way questioning the efficacy and safety of vaccines and the mandating thereof are just to be treated as an isolated tiny minority of cranks. And in order to keep that going, to make that even faintly believable, then you have to say things like, a few hundred, a few dozen people turned up and protested. But I can make no sense of it. It's beyond belief.
And Neil Oliver, look, obviously it's the same way that they would say everyone at these marches are anti-vaxxers. Yes, a large proportion may have chosen not to have the vaccine, but there are also a lot of folk like me who have a fundamental belief in bodily autonomy.
Yes, that is the bottom line. Really, we have to ask ourselves what kind of society this is. If your employer, backed up by your government, can insist that you take an experimental, as yet unlicensed medical product around which there are questions about efficacy and safety, if your employer and your government can insist you take that and then sack you if you refuse, then that is not about public health. That is a tyranny. And I won't submit to tyranny. I won't live under the yoke of tyranny in that way. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, all of those points seem to need to be made again and again and again. These are not licensed products. They were released under emergency use authorization. They're still in clinical trials. They are not licensed. We will not, for years to come, have what you could call long-term data about the long-term effects. For the longest time, there have been legitimate questions raised about their safety, the possibility, at the very least, that large numbers of people's adverse reactions and deaths may have been caused by these vaccines. All of these questions mean that any government that mandates the taking of these products, it's immoral, it's unethical. To me, it seems borderline criminal. It's malfeasance on the part of the authorities. It would be malpractice and a breach of ethics and oaths on the part of any medical professionals that got involved in the application of that mandate. And I see, we've said all this before. You've said versions of the same things. I've been saying this, and many others have said it over and over again. You cannot mandate, well, plainly you can. We must not accept the mandating of these products for anyone, because if it starts with these NHS workers, then that's a finger in the door, that's a toe in the door, and that door will then be pushed wider and wider and wider, and then it's hypothetically possible that it becomes, mandates for all of us.
And there's lots of reasons why an NHS worker might not want to be jabbed, Neil. Some of the reasons that you've just explained, but for others it's because they've had COVID multiple times and they know they've had natural immunity already. And I just feel like the government are essentially trying to coerce them into getting jabbed, because I just cannot believe for the life of me that the government are going to allow this to go through when they have been speaking for months and months and months about a crisis in the health service. Oh, but we're going to wave goodbye to 70,000 workers. To me, this feels like coercion, pure and simple. And when the date gets close, Neil, they will postpone for a number of months and hope that this whole nasty policy goes away and that we all forget it. But we won't forget it.
I agree. Postponing is not good enough. Postponing is nowhere near good enough, because implicit in postponing is to say we're still right to do it, we're just not doing it yet. Mandating vaccines for anyone gets thrown out now and forever. It's so fundamental that our society has evolved over, well, let's say generations, if not centuries. The right to work, the right to all manner of freedoms, freedom of movement, freedom of speech. We have rights to dignified lives. We don't discriminate. We've been telling our children for the longest time that we must not discriminate, not on any grounds, and that includes health and the health status of other people. Now, people fought and died for those kinds of freedoms, and at great personal cost these freedoms were obtained, and now we're proposing to dismantle, to undo all of that. And yes, there's no point in being mealy-mouthed about it. There's no shilly-shallying. It is coercion. If you are in the process, if your practice is to take away more and more from people, up to and including their jobs, which by definition, that's the way in which people feed themselves and feed their families. If you're going to just nibble away at what people have, take away more and more until eventually the time comes when they have to submit, then you can call that anything you want, but it is coercion.
Yep. No, it is.
A rose by any other name, that is coercion.
It is, Neil Oliver. Beautifully put as ever. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Of course, on this show, we must bring you both sides of this issue. So the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has previously defended the policy by saying this is all about patient safety. We know vaccines work. We know that they reduce the risk of you being infected, so it reduces the spread of an infection. People, whether they are in care homes or hospital bed, they are particularly vulnerable to the virus if it could be fatal. It is our duty to do everything we can to protect them. The University of Oxford regularly addresses concerns over COVID vaccine safety. Its Vaccine Knowledge Project says the urgent need to control the pandemic and save lives meant that development processes were significantly accelerated. This does not mean that steps were skipped or that safety was compromised. The COVID-19 vaccines currently approved in the UK have been thoroughly reviewed by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. It's 10 p.m. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Still to come. With more Partygate revelations breaking tonight, as it's revealed Boris Johnson committed the crime of the century by being given a cake on his birthday. Can the embattled Prime Minister survive another week of this witch hunt? I don't think we should give in to this hysterical mod out for blood, because he's still the best person for the job for now. But my superstar panel of Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Esther Kraku will give their uncompromising opinions shortly. Olympic gold medalist and one of the world's most famous trans voices, Caitlyn Jenner joins me for a world-exclusive interview as she warns trans athletes like swimmer Leah Thomas are doing more harm than good to the trans community with their controversial success. Don't miss that, coming up very shortly. As Jacinda Ardern sacrifices common sense and the freedom of Kiwis all over the world in her cold-hearted pursuit of zero COVID.
The whole of New Zealand will move into the red setting of the traffic light system.
When will the super woke totalitarian wake up to the dangers of her crazy policies and learn to live with the virus like the rest of the world? Star Sky News Australia presenter Rita Panahi is one of the few folks down under been brave enough to speak out against their damaging isolationism. She's here and uncancelled at 10:45. Also, our university's trigger warnings for George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984. So ironic that it's almost parody. And is it time we just ditch these ridiculous trigger warnings altogether? We'll tackle that in the Media Buzz. And the Queen's Guard held this fitting tribute to rock legend Meat Loaf, who sadly died last week. Find out more about that and a rather less appropriate tribute to the late great American singer at 10:30. We'll also bring you the newspaper front pages hot off the press and crown another greatest Briton in Union Jackass. But first, the news headlines at 10 with Polly Middlehurst.
Thanks, Dan. Your top story tonight, number 10, has confirmed staff gathered in the Cabinet Room in Downing Street to mark the Prime Minister's 56th birthday on the 19th of June 2020. That's during our first lockdown. According to an exclusive ITV News report, up to 30 people are alleged to have attended the event, which was organised by the Prime Minister's wife, Carrie. A spokesperson said the Prime Minister was at the gathering for less than 10 minutes, and later that evening, number 10 also confirmed the Prime Minister hosted a small number of family members outside, which they say was within COVID rules at the time. And they deny ITV News reports that the event was held indoors. In international news, NATO says European leaders and President Biden stand united in warning Russia that an attack on Ukraine will have severe costs. A virtual meeting has been held this evening between President Biden and European leaders, including France, Germany and the UK. Meanwhile, the US says up to 8,500 of its troops are ready to deploy if tensions rise. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says military plans were being fine-tuned to meet Ukraine scenarios.
We have been consulting with allies in deployments and refining plans for all scenarios. We've always said we would reinforce our allies on the eastern flank. And those conversations and discussions have certainly been part of what our national security officials have been discussing with their counterparts now for several weeks. In fact, we've never ruled out the option of providing additional assistance in advance of an invasion.
Jen Psaki is there. Well, here the Transport Secretary has announced that post-travel testing in England will be scrapped from the 11th of February. That's ahead of the half-term school holidays. Speaking in the House of Commons, Grant Shapps said that double-vaccinated passengers arriving in the UK will no longer need to take a lateral flow or PCR test. Shapps also said travel testing has outlived its usefulness, as Britain is now one of the most vaccinated countries in the world.
Today, I can confirm to the House, Mr. Speaker, that our international travel regime will also now be liberalised as part of our efforts to ensure that 2022 is the year in which restrictions on travel, on lockdowns and limits on people's lives are firmly placed in the past.
Grant Shapps. 3 former US police officers who were on the scene of the murder of George Floyd in May 2020 are on trial in the United States. They're accused of violating Mr. Floyd's civil rights by failing to provide medical care when fellow officer Derek Chauvin knelt on his neck for more than 9 minutes. Chauvin received a sentence of 22.5 years for George Floyd's murder. 2 of the officers are also charged with failing to stop Chauvin. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now, more from Dan Wootton and Tonight.
Caitlyn Jenner on the way, but tomorrow's news tonight. First now in our Media Buzz. We've got just one front page in, hot off the press, and the Metro lead with NATO jets ready to scramble. The paper reports the military alliance, which Britain is a member of, has ordered warplanes and battleships to Eastern Europe as Boris Johnson accused Russia of planning a lightning war on Ukraine. My superstar panel back with me now. The Daily Express columnist Carol Malone is here. So too, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth and the social commentator Esther Kraku. Breaking tonight, another so-called Downing Street party involving Boris Johnson has been revealed. ITV News reported the PM's wife, Carrie, organised a birthday celebration for him during the first lockdown in 2020. Up to 30 people have said to have attended the event on June the 19th, 1 week after Boris Johnson said this in a press conference.
I urge everyone to continue to show restraint and respect the rules which are designed to keep us all safe. And it's only because of the restraint that you've all shown so far, that we're able to move gradually out of this lockdown. So please, to repeat what you've heard so many times before, stay alert, maintain social distancing, keep washing your hands.
But Number 10 have responded tonight saying this is totally untrue. In line with the rules at the time, the Prime Minister hosted a small number of family members outside that evening. A group of staff working in Number 10 that day gathered briefly in the Cabinet Room after a meeting to wish the Prime Minister a happy birthday. He was there for less than 10 minutes. The PM's most slavishly loyal minister, Nadine Dorries, jumped to his side too, tweeting, "So, when people in an office buy a cake in the middle of the afternoon for someone else they are working in the office with and stop for 10 minutes to sing happy birthday and then go back to their desks, this is now called a party." I've been highly critical about Boris Johnson's response to the pandemic on many levels, but can I get excited about him taking 10 minutes off to celebrate his birthday 2 months after he almost died? No, I'm sorry, I can't. I'll tell you what's going on. The usual suspects are baying for blood, but it's not up to them to change the Prime Minister. It will be up to Tory MPs once the Grey report is released. Financial Times journalist Sebastian Payne reports Sue Gray was already aware of this alleged gathering, so the publication of her report not expected to be delayed as a result of this. Esther Kraku, am I misunderstanding something here? Like, is this a huge news scandal like the media are making it out to be?
I know, it's horrifying. Someone had a birthday and got a cake for it. But you know what's really funny? I just think it's ironic how much the mainstream media is pushing this, but Keir Starmer breaking the rules.
Oh, they didn't care about that.
They didn't care about that at all. It's
they
incredible.
Didn't report it at the time.
And this is the thing. I think, again, the media
he was
is not
downing
able...
beer.
Well, yeah.
On video.
But the point is they're unable to read the room, right? We don't really care about this, right? We care about getting out of this lockdown to get our lives back. We care about the fact that our economy was crashed into a brick wall and now they're raising taxes on people that are the most vulnerable. These are the things we care about, not whether someone got a birthday cake.
I mean, Benjamin Butterworth, I would say there's a lot of overplaying of hands going on here because I shared the outrage over the reports of the first party, which I think was a genuine party, and I think that was despicable that was going on at a time when we were all locked in our homes. I'm sorry, someone bringing in a cake to an office during a working day, that ain't a scandal, is it? You're not outraged. Are you outraged, really? Or is this just political for you?
I mean, I'm outraged that you're basically taking your lines from Tory's central office, so far as I can take today.
Well, that's so ironic.
You will excuse
That's so ironic, given I've probably been one of
saying.
the most critical people of Boris Johnson throughout this pandemic when it comes to his pandemic policies. Unlike you, who just nodded all of these rules through.
And yet you'll excuse him now.
Unlike you, who just nodded all of these rules through and cowered in your house.
You would do anything if it got rid of the BBC. You wouldn't care how much of a liar and a charlatan they are, and that's why you keep supporting people like Nadine Dorries and Boris Johnson. Look, the truth is that you might want to explain away on a normal, rational basis the idea of bringing in a cake. But of course, at the time, it was not in the rules, gathering 30 people in the Cabinet Room. Now, we see pictures of the Cabinet Rooms. 30 people, just a bit bigger than the size of Cabinet, are crammed together. There's no way social distancing was possible. Other people who were having their loved ones die or be seriously ill could not do this. And so you might be able to make the argument of, oh, it wasn't a big deal for Boris Johnson. But why don't you have someone sit here who couldn't have a birthday for their seriously ill loved one, Benjamin, and tell them
I think you've missed what I've been saying over the past 2 weeks. You haven't been listening hard enough.
No, you have missed the point.
You haven't been listening hard enough. I haven't missed the point.
You have.
You have missed the point because my point, Carol, throughout has been the fact that they were breaking the rules, the fact that the people who made the rules were consistently and constantly breaking the rules, shows to me the rules were an ass. The rules should not have been law. None of us should have been following these
I don't
rules.
necessarily agree with that. However, I do think it is. We know about these parties now. We know about what happened. We will find out, conclusively in a few days' time whether Boris broke the rules or not. However, we can't every week just have a different party and expect to be outraged. We think they have broken the rules. No one's in any doubt that they did. And believing now and knowing that they have, and it will be probably confirmed in a few days' time that they did, we now have to move on or get shut of them. We can't just keep going in this party circle the whole time. Because what can we say about it every single time? Are we going to be outraged? No. It's getting a bit boring now. We know what was wrong. Yeah. It was terribly wrong. Everything you just said there is totally right. People at the time couldn't have parties. But how many times can we keep saying that we either get shut of them or we allow them to go on?
But Carol, you must also accept, though, there is a difference between a raucous, out-of-control party in the basement of Number 10, where people are breaking Boris and Carrie Johnson's child's swings or slides or whatever it is, and there was music being blasted. There's a big difference between that
and a cake.
And between bringing in a cake to the Prime Minister, who, yes, had his wife in the room, but come on.
It's now looking very personal and very spiteful. And there are one or two people behind all these leaks, and it's got to stop. We've got to get on with the business of getting this country back together.
It really is.
Well, there's one or two people. The first person is called Dominic. The second person is called Cummings.
There you go. I didn't want to say it. There you go. You did it.
Boris Johnson was having birthday parties with his interior designer, while other people couldn't say goodbye to their loved ones in hospital.
You know what I find? I'm sorry. I find your outrage quite funny, considering I don't see the same outrage from you about other people from other parties breaking the rules. I don't see this outrage with Margaret Ferrier or Keir Starmer or all the other non-Tory. I'm not defending the Tories. I'm just saying be consistent.
But what about Starmer breaking the rules?
All politicians have been unable to follow these COVID lockdowns.
Benjamin, what about Starmer breaking the rules?
Benjamin, what about we know that wasn't breaking the rules.
It was breaking the rules. He was drinking beer and eating in a room with
a room full of more than 6 people he was not living with.
Benjamin, that's literally what he was doing.
What's the difference between that and a cake? What's the difference between that and a cake?
In that video,
apart from beer,
he's 2 metres away from Mary.
What do you mean 2 metres? Is your mind? Is it your mind?
People,
you want
this
that
sums it up.
This is outrageous.
It's political. And by the way, Benjamin,
Boris Johnson in his job.
Oh my God, this is so funny because you're being so disingenuous. Anyone who follows everything that I've been saying over the past years, which are these amazing people who watch my show every night, know that what you're saying is completely rubbish. I have been far more critical of Boris Johnson than you ever have been during this pandemic. But what I'm saying, and I will repeat, I will not allow members of the London Liberal media elite like Benjamin Butterworth to try and dictate when Boris Johnson leaves his role. Now, ice hockey isn't exactly known for being a cuddly sport, but that all changed for one team in the US state of Pennsylvania this weekend. Fans of the Hershey Bears hurled over 52,000 stuffed toys into the rink after the team's first goal of Saturday's match, breaking a world record in the process. Now, players leapt into the massive piles of plushies as they celebrated the return of the annual tradition, which was put on ice in 2020 and 2021 due to COVID. The cuddly toys, which were provided by fans, will be donated to 25 charities and organisations in the local community. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, Esther Kraku, do stand by, because coming up I'm going to be asking you about whether the trigger warning, the introduction of a trigger warning for the book 1984 brought us one step closer to living in a dystopia that would make George Orwell shudder. That's as the media buzz continues. But next, as the issue of trans athletes is thrust back into the spotlight with the success of swimmer Leah Thomas, one of the world's most famous trans voices and athletic superstars, Caitlyn Jenner sits down with me for a world-exclusive interview. Don't miss that in just a couple of minutes' time.
Good evening. A remarkably similar day tomorrow. It's, again, going to be cold. If anything, probably feeling a little colder than today. Grey skies for the majority, but not much rain around. Main exception to the dry story will be across the northwest of Scotland, where we do have these weak weather fronts. High pressure has been dominating, and under it we've got a lot of cloud trapped, and it's not really shifting very far because the winds are light. We've seen some breaks in the cloud over northeast England, eastern Scotland, and if we keep those breaks tonight, we could easily see temperatures dropping below freezing. But even where it's cloudy, it's going to turn quite cold. Temperatures dropping down close to freezing zero there in Hull, 1 in Cardiff. A little milder in the far northwest, where there will be some showery rain at times across the Highlands and the Northern Isles. That rain likely to pep up a little bit later on Tuesday. Elsewhere, it's again a rather drab but largely dry day. We should see some breaks in the cloud across Aberdeenshire. Again, northeast England may see a bit of sunshine, but for most it will be a grey day. And temperatures lower than today's. Look at that, only 3 or 4 in Birmingham and London. Again, the top temperature probably Aberdeenshire with some sunshine here, 9 or 10 is possible. A little more rain will trickle southwards across Scotland during the evening, but bar the odd bit of drizzle for Glasgow, not a lot else. A few showers continuing in the far north of Scotland, where it will be breezy, but elsewhere the wind's light. We keep a lot of clouds, and that will help to stop too much frost for Wednesday. Wednesday's a similar day, perhaps a little bit brighter, a better chance of seeing a few glimmers of sunshine. But then also we're going to see a bit more rain coming in across the Western Isles and the Highlands, and that's going to be quite heavy, and that will swing across Scotland during Wednesday evening with strengthening winds as well. So the wind's really getting lively on Wednesday night from this area of low pressure, very blustery in the far north. This weather front moves across the country before high pressure moves back in to bring most of us a dry end to the week.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world. If
you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. Now my next guest, Caitlyn Jenner, has fit multiple lives into her 72 years. An Olympic gold medalist, the best athlete in the world, a reality TV star, a Republican candidate for California government, and one of the most famous transgender celebrities in the world. So let's cast our mind back to the summer of 1976. Jenner stormed the Montreal Olympics, winning the gold medal in the decathlon in record-breaking fashion, and with it rocketing to international stardom. Jenner married Kris Kardashian and became a household name, starring in the reality TV trailblazer Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Then in 2015, following a high-profile divorce from the Kardashian matriarch, came the moment that changed everything. After years of enduring the feeling of living in the wrong body, Bruce became Caitlyn. Well, Caitlyn has since become a vocal advocate for trans rights. However, when it comes to the hot button issue of trans athletes, she has a very firm stance. Women's sports must be protected. The issue has been thrust back into the limelight in recent weeks as University of Pennsylvania trans swimmer Lia Thomas dominates the women's sport after previously competing on the men's team. It prompted a review of the rules by the National Collegiate Athletic Association. However, the sporting body essentially swerved, making the controversial decision by refusing to commit to a uniform policy. Well, Caitlyn isn't going to be holding back on this issue, and I'm delighted that she joins me now. Caitlyn, look, this is such a
introduction.
Well, what a life you have lived.
Introduction. Thank you. Yeah,
what a life you have lived. But I want to stick to begin with, Caitlyn, with the news of the day. And of course, this must be such a difficult one for you because you have become, I would say, the most famous trans woman in the world. At the same time, I think you have taken the very brave stance of saying we have to protect women's sport. So can you just talk to me about this Lia Thomas situation? Because to me, it doesn't look fair, Caitlyn. It doesn't seem fair.
Well, Dan, I'm a common sense person. I have common sense. Obviously, in the case of Lia Thomas, it's not working. She's beating the women by 2 laps. Only 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, she was on the men's team. She did all the required testosterone depressing drugs for the last year. Technically, she is legal to compete, but I think the NCAA kind of kicked the bucket down the road. I think, to be honest with you, they got to change the rules. I am firmly behind protecting women's sports. We cannot have biological boys competing against women in women's sports. It's bad for a couple of reasons. One, it's bad for the trans community. To be honest with you, this is terrible publicity for the trans community. Like, we're taking advantage of women, okay? And it's bad, obviously, for women's sports. We need a fair playing field. And right now, if we allow this, it's not a fair playing field. There's a lot of work to be done in the future. But, you know, I use the example of I love to play golf. And I play with the ladies up at my club all the time. Honestly, they're more fun to play with than the guys. The
I can imagine that.
But,
much better gossip as well.
Yes, but with that said, you know, they always say, why don't you play in the ladies' tournament? And I always happen to be busy at the time and never do. Because I can hit the ball 100 yards farther than they can. I can reach all the par 5s in 2. It's just not fair. And when you do transition and you go through this, and I think in Lia Thomas's position, there's a couple of things. You have to take responsibility, okay? And you have to have some integrity. I don't know why she's doing this. I respect her right 100% to live her life authentically. But that comes with some responsibility. And I don't think she's being very responsible when it comes to something like this. I think the NCAA, when they kicked the can down the road, it was a shame. We need to take a strong stance in something like this. Because here you have Lia Thomas, and there's so few trans athletes. You know, there's so few. And it's affecting all of women's sports. And it's just not fair.
And what the issue is, Caitlyn, is that folk like me, folk like you, who are clearly supporters of the trans community, are now being called transphobic for holding these positions. And actually, I find that really counterproductive.
Oh, I do too. You should see the heat I take. But I feel like I'm on the right side. I mean, when you have this woke world that we're living in right now, no matter what you do, they're going to come after you. And I like to stand on the side of what I think is right. And I stand on my position when it comes to trans athletes. I think it's extremely important. And but I have common sense. I can take the heat. I've been taking the heat for a long time in a lot of different subjects. You know, here I was when I did Diane Sawyer and came out. I took more heat for being a Republican than I did for being trans. Which to me is very funny, but...
Well, that tells you something about the state of California today, doesn't it? My goodness.
Oh, it does. And I just went through, I ran for governor. We had a recall election on Gavin Newsom. And to be honest with you, I spent 6 months just working, trying to get the attention of the people of California that, you know what, we're losing California. 18,000 companies have left. We lost a congressional seat because less people live here. They're getting out. And unfortunately, we didn't win. And Gavin Newsom is still in there. This democratic political machine that we have in California with private sector unions, special interest groups is very strong, and it's tough to go up against them. And so I learned a lot. I'm going to stay involved in politics. I don't know if I'll run for another position, but I certainly will stay involved with the Republican Party and do the best we can, because especially on a national level, we're losing it. I mean, we're losing this country.
Caitlyn, how did your family feel when you told them that you were going to make this bid to be the governor and running on the Republican ticket? Because, of course, they are in the world of celebrity and the Californian world of celebrity, where it's almost assumed that you've got to be a Democrat.
Yeah, no, I've never been on the Democratic side. I've always been a moderate, what I call a moderate Republican. I'm on the Republican side because I have conservative economic values. I believe in less taxes, less regulations, a pro-business environment. And but on the social side, being a moderate, I realized that, yeah, at times government can help, okay? But you can't have one without the other. You can't help people if you don't have a thriving economy and you don't have tax revenue. As far as my family, I just went one-to-one with them and said, hey, this is what I'm doing. I don't want one thing from you. This is my deal. You guys stay out of it. And that's pretty much what we did all the way through. It was something I wanted to do. And I never looked at the family for, any help or anything like that.
No, this was very good of you.
The kids love me, and I want to leave it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. But you must have been slightly tempted, because it's like you've got Kylie, who probably has more followers than any human being on the planet. Just imagine how many votes you could have got from one endorsement. But of course, I understand why you wouldn't want to drag your family into that.
This was my deal, not my family's deal. But they were all, personally, they were all supportive. Hey, Dad, if that's what you want to do, go do it.
Caitlyn, do you have any regrets looking back at your life? Is there anything that you wish you had done differently on the path to get here? Because it has been an extraordinary journey.
It has been. I have lived the most amazing life. I've stood on top of a platform in front of the world, best athlete in the world. I have back room, got Olympic gold medal sitting in there. It's not in some Soviet room. But then on the other hand, I also have, I've been able to see the world in a very different perspective. I also have Glamour's Woman of the Year award.
Yes.
Now, Dan, that is a double. Yeah, that is a double. And, but no, I have no regrets whatsoever. I am so happy that there's so much confusion in your life when you suffer from gender dysphoria. And to be honest with you, I think if I hadn't been gender dysphoric, and I was also a dyslexic kid, that when sports came around, I took it more seriously than the next person. And that drive was all about me trying to prove myself. And it took me all the way to be the best in the world at what I did. And I remember after it was over with, the next morning I got up and I looked in the mirror, and the medal was on the bathroom counter, and didn't have a stitch of clothes on, looked at the medal, put the medal on, looked in the mirror and said, oh my God, what did you just do? Did I build this character up so big that I'm stuck with him for the rest of my life? Because there was so much more to me than just that win. And so it has been an interesting journey, and I'm very happy with my life, and I'm happy to be in a position that I can help other people.
Well, Caitlyn, I'm so glad that you have found happiness, because you weren't happy before, were you? And so that must feel very empowering to just be able to say, I'm happy now.
I wake up in the morning and just be myself all day. No secrets. I even did a book, Secrets of My Life. And I just wake up every morning, be myself, and try to help other people and try to be a good person.
Well, look, Caitlyn, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Come back soon. Thank you so much. Former Olympian and TV star Caitlyn Jenner. Coming up, as Jacinda Ardern's cruel and dangerous zero-COVID obsession takes its most deluded turn yet, when will enough be enough? Sky News Australia superstar Rita Panahi beams in as Down Under remains under siege. That's uncancelled at 10:40. But next, trigger warnings on 1984? It sounds like something out of any right-minded Conservatives Room 101, but they're real. And it's got me asking, should we just get rid of these ridiculous trigger warnings once and for all? I'll get the thoughts of my superstar panel in the Media Buzz after the break, plus yet more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our Media Buzz. Lots of front pages have been delivered. Benjamin Butterworth's paper, The Eye, claims Johnson's problems grow with birthday party leak. I wouldn't be so sure about that. The publication reports further party allegations are expected, with one former minister telling them Cummings has gone feral. I think that happened a long time ago, let's be honest. The Guardian also leads with Boris Johnson's alleged birthday bash, but separately reports the United States is prepared to send 8,500 troops to Eastern Europe. They have been put on heightened alert and are awaiting orders to deploy to the region should Russia invade Ukraine. Boris Johnson is going to regret posing with a birthday cake in this throwback photo because it's leading the newspaper of record, The Times, in addition to numerous other newspapers. The Independent say the Islamophobia review has been ignored by ministers. The paper reports that the Imam, reported by the government to draw up a definition of Islamophobia, said earlier today that he had received no meaningful engagement from ministers in years. This news comes as fresh Islamophobia claims have engulfed the Tory party after Nusrat Ghani said she was sacked due to her colleagues' concerns about her quote-unquote Muslimness. The Daily Star, they're not shocked by the Boris birthday revelations, but having a go anyway. Oh, what a surprise, they declare. The paper asks, as its thought for the day, with so many parties, how did they ever get any work done? The Daily Telegraph reports President Biden discussed the possible mobilisation of thousands of troops to NATO member states bordering Russia, with a further 45,000 on standby if the situation continues to deteriorate. NATO ramped up its response to Russian aggression, sending warships and fighter aircraft to shore up its eastern flank. The Daily Express also leads on the turmoil on the Ukrainian border and Boris Johnson's strong stance against Putin. Plus, 3 British women, one of whom has incurable cancer, have shattered the world record for rowing across the Atlantic. Well done to Abby Johnston, Charlotte Irvine and Kat Cordiner, who has secondary ovarian cancer. They covered 3,000 miles in 42 days, 7 hours and 70 minutes. That's 7 days quicker than the previous female trio record. And the Daily Mail reports former Brexit minister, a hero, Lord Frost, wants April's national insurance hike to be scrapped to help the economic recovery. The former Brexit chief insisted the £12 billion tax grab was not needed and that scrapping the increase was vital in the face of cost of living crises. And of course, that's exactly what I said in my digest tonight. So well done, Lord Frost. My superstar panel back now. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, the aforementioned Benjamin Butterworth, and the social commentator Esther Kraku. Now watch out, everyone. The thought police are on patrol at the University of Northampton. In a move so ironic, it's almost parody, actually. George Orwell's novel 1984, portraying a dystopian Britain ravaged by extreme censorship, has been slapped with an offensive trigger warning by university bosses. The science fiction book that coined the idea of a Big Brother society where people are terrified about saying the wrong thing, did they know about 2021, has been labelled explicit material, which some might find offensive and upsetting. The woke overlords at the university issued the warning to students studying a module called Identity Under Construction, sounding the alarm that texts address challenging issues related to violence, gender, sexuality, class, race, abuses, sexual abuses, political ideas and offensive language. Carol, I feel like this is just a farce. I mean, number one, do they not see the irony in this?
Clearly
and number
not.
two, come on, university students can cope with this.
Yeah, you know what? There was a great line on social media today. It says 1984 was intended not as a warning, not an instruction manual. Which is so it's ironic that these students don't see that they're living in 1984's dystopian story. You know, this is a book that makes very powerful points about what happens to a society that doesn't cherish its academic freedoms or its own history. And these students are living in that. Universities are fast becoming, you know, like Big Brother campuses where there's only one thought, one belief that are tolerated. If you don't tolerate them, you're out. But, you know, I think it's really, if I was a student, I would be incredibly insulted by this because what it suggests is all of them are teetering on the brink of having a mental breakdown. You know, when you're 18 years old when you get to university, if you can't take just a book that has challenging aspects to it, well, then you shouldn't be at university.
What about a history student looking at the Holocaust, for God's sake?
You know what? That should be a mandatory reading before you even get to apply to university.
You should,
I read it at 16 and it traumatized me a little bit because I actually thought it would be something dainty and fairy-like. It absolutely wasn't like that at all.
You thought 1984 would be dainty and fairy? What made you think that?
I don't know why. I just saw it was in my library and I just had it.
It was good for you. It helped you develop.
No, it was fantastic. And it's part of the reason why I applied to do the degree that I did. But I genuinely believe that this just shows how far gone our universities are. It's really, it should be mandatory reading before you even get to university.
But Benjamin Butterworth, it's your generation that loves these trigger warnings, right? You want to be mollycoddled.
I mean, I think the term trigger warning is pretty triggering. You know, that's there to try and make it look like it's a dodgy thing. And actually, you know, this isn't saying that people shouldn't read the book or university students shouldn't be studying it. It's exactly the same as when at 9 o'clock and you have a show on a TV channel.
And why do we have that?
Hang on.
Why do we have that? Every TV show now carries a warning. No, you can't. Every TV show now has a warning that says there'll be some distressing scenes here. And it's somebody who's crying
turns it off
or gone
after they
boo
see
to
that?
somebody.
Has
That's
anyone
not
ever
distressing.
turned off a television show because it says these might have distressing messages?
well, parents might.
Books should distress you. They should make you think.
Yeah,
They should upset you. That's the
But you
point
will
of them.
accept, I'm sure, that if there's swearing and whatnot, it's useful to have
Oh,
that.
please.
I'm sorry.
If you've got kids
Have
in
you
the
ever
room,
been on the tube?
Parents don't want to have their kids, you know.
Have you ever been on the tube?
That's quite
You
reasonable.
are the perfect example of the woke generation, and this is the problem. You're not prepared to tackle original thought. You need to be protected at every step of the way. And I think these trigger warnings should go, actually. They should go altogether.
Do you know the origin of them? They started in the very early days of the internet, when there were feminist forums and support groups, and it preceded when they were going to have discussions about violent abuse and rape.
What's
so
wrong
it
with
was
that?
it was a trigger. Well, it was a trigger warning for people who were going to discuss that and maybe see things that they didn't expect
Which is
to
a little
see.
bit different.
Which is
to a warning about
entirely
discussions
different.
of sexuality
Well, it's not just 1984, it's Jane Eyre.
Of course.
It's Great Expectations. Trigger warning.
And it's a lot less than that. It's Disney films these
Yes!
days. Bloody Dumbo.
Yes, I just
now,
saw that.
The barbecue company Weber faced a grilling last week after it sent customers an inappropriately timed, I can't believe this, folks, meatloaf recipe just hours after the legendary musician Meatloaf died. Now, Marvin Lee Aday, who was aged 74 when he passed away in Nashville, Tennessee, one of the greatest musicians and singers of all time. Weber clearly weren't aware before they emailed their weekly newsletter containing a grilled meatloaf recipe to customers all around the world. Now, they were forced to send their condolences to the late great singer's family and apologise to subscribers, saying, at the time we shared the recipe with you, we were not aware of the unfortunate passing of American singer and actor Mr. Marvin Lee Aday, also known as Meatloaf. We want to express our deepest apologies for this oversight and for any offence this email may have caused. Do you know what I love about this? Meatloaf would have found the whole thing utterly hilarious and he wouldn't have wanted an apology. Well, the Queen's Guards gave a more fitting tribute to the loaf man outside Buckingham Palace yesterday. Oh, I love that. I love that. Meatloaf, what a man he was. Caramello, Benjamin Butterworth, Esther Kraku, do stand by because coming up, my superstar panel will nominate today's greatest Briton and Union Jackass. But next, my fellow Kiwis will call me a traitor, but I have to say it, Jacinda Ardern's zero COVID policy is cruel, deluded and doomed to failure. Sky News Australia's star journalist Rita Panahi will bring an update from Down Under right after we take a quick look at what's coming up in tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, in a world-exclusive interview from her Syrian prison camp, ISIS runaway Shamima Begum is challenged on the claim she hopes will convince Britain to take mercy on her. Plus, the world's most controversial woman makes an unbelievable proposal to Boris Johnson. Bring me back to the UK so I can help you tackle terrorism. And as she complains she's sick of no one believing her de-radicalisation, the man who tracked her down, top journalist Andrew Jury, joins me in the studio to ask, why should we ever let Begum back into the UK, given her despicable actions? That's coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Keep her out, I say, but we'll see what she says tomorrow night. Time now, though, for Uncancelled. And this is where the world's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. Jacinda Ardern's New Zealand is a country spiraling out of control after coming down with a serious case of COVID madness. In the past few days, the totalitarian and lefty clothing has cancelled her wedding due to Omicron, a tiny sacrifice compared to that of anyone unlucky enough to come into contact with a positive case, who faced being locked up in isolation for 24 days.
That means Omicron is now circulating in Auckland and possibly the Nelson Marlborough region, if not elsewhere. On that basis, as we have previously signalled, the whole of New Zealand will move into the red setting of the traffic light system at 11:59 p.m. tonight, Sunday, 23 January.
This whole situation upsets me greatly. As you might know, I am a dual citizen of the UK and New Zealand. My parents born here in the UK, or my dad on a British Army base in Malta. I was born in New Zealand, moved here when I was 21. But as I point out in my new Mail Online column, as it stands for me right now, there is literally no way to return to New Zealand, no matter what happens to my family or friends. These policies have been nothing short of wicked for Kiwis trapped overseas, and Ardern's country now provides the proof that the isolationism of zero COVID is downright dangerous. Well, I'm delighted to get the perspective of one of the few folks down under who have been brave enough to speak out on the troubling developments there throughout this entire pandemic. Star Sky News Australia host Rita Panahi, who launched her brand new show this week. Rita, it's great to have you here. And look, I know things have been crazy in Australia, and we've spoken about that so much on the show, but at least your Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, seems to have a desire to return to normal at some point, whereas Ardern is just getting madder and madder by the day.
It's the only thing that gives us some comfort here in Australia, those of us who have called out some of the crazy overreach over the last couple of years, is that at least we're not New Zealand. That is the only thing that gives us comfort. I mean, they are mad. They are still effectively pursuing an elimination model when we know, and we have known for about 18 months now, that this thing's going to be endemic. There's no way to eliminate it. And at some point, they're going to have the virus circulate just like Australia is. And I think Australia is the perfect example to them, because we were almost having a quasi-elimination strategy ourselves here, in some states anyway. And yet, right now, we've got some of the highest per capita COVID rates in the world, higher than the UK, higher than the US, because we had hardly any infection over the past 18 months.
Of course, and this is what's so frustrating.
Everyone's got it.
Yeah, because Rita, we were saying throughout 2020, throughout 2021, if you keep this virus out, at some point when you open up, it is going to ravage the country, and that's exactly what's happening.
Well, yeah, and like you, I speak to infectious disease experts on a regular basis, and they have been saying everyone is going to be exposed to this virus. Now they're saying everyone's going to be probably exposed multiple times, just like influenza. Just because you've had it once doesn't mean you won't get it again. So we know all this, and yet in New Zealand, they think they can just lock their borders, become some bizarro hermit nation forever. I mean, at some point they're going to run out of resources, because I would hate to see what their national debt's doing. And you know what? They will say, well, look at our death rate. Our COVID death rate is lower than just about anywhere in the world. It's lower than the UK, certainly. But you look at the overall death rate, and it actually hasn't changed. You look at deaths up to 12 months up to September 2021. Same as up to 12 months up to September 2019. So people are still dying. They might not be having the COVID tick next to their name when they die, but as we know, many COVID deaths, the majority have a number of comorbidities. So it's often people dying with COVID, not just from COVID. And they don't seem to still understand that in New Zealand. They think they're becoming immortal. No one's ever going to die again.
I know, and actually, I've been talking a lot about those stats on my show over the past week, Rita, because a Freedom of Information request was done here, and it actually revealed that less than 18,000 folk have died solely from COVID with no other underlying conditions over the course of the pandemic. So really, what in New Zealand they love to talk about, what in Australia they love to talk about, is this 150,000 death toll in the UK, but it's actually incredibly misleading.
It is, and you also have to look at the average or the median age of death. People, again, like they get upset if you mention that, but again, we are not immortal. Everybody dies, and certainly in Australia, the median age of death has been at life expectancy or higher than life expectancy throughout the pandemic. So that in itself I think, is fairly crucial information that should be talked about. And one of the most absurd things throughout this pandemic, whether we're talking UK, US, or here in Australia, is just the lack of knowledge about not just the risk factors, but the death rate and the hospitalisation rate for different age groups. And the fact that things like morbid obesity are a huge issue. And yet, I don't know, because it's not PC or we don't want to body shame anybody, we haven't talked about that. We've locked people up, we've closed gyms, everyone's got fatter. And yet we know with this virus, obesity is an enormous risk factor for having a really bad reaction. But New Zealand, really, they are mad. Can you imagine being locked up for 24 days just because you're a contact?
When you may not have even had COVID. It's madness. And look, the reason I wrote this column today, Rita, and it's deeply personal for me because I will get a lot of pushback on it. And obviously, I'm very proud of the fact that I'm a dual citizen and I'm very proud of my New Zealand roots. But the reality is I haven't been able to see my mum, dad and my sister for 2 years now. I've had friends, Rita, who have been locked up in a government-run hotel with members of the army outside while their mother has died in a hospital down the road. So anyone who talks about Jacinda Ardern as if she's some sort of be kind human being, it's like she's not. She's the opposite. And you know, Rita, they were doing this Squid Game-style lottery. That's the only way I can describe it, where we have to enter to try and buy a ticket back to New Zealand. 45,000 people try each month. There's only something like 1,000 winners. Once you win, you then have to spend about £2,000 on a flight, then another £2,000 to spend 14 days locked up with these members of the army outside. And because of Omicron, Rita, they have even axed the lottery. So for me, it is about time we start exposing Jacinda Ardern for what she really is. She's a nasty human being, and if she didn't have that sort of soft voice and that smirk, we'd be talking about her in an incredibly different manner.
Well, I don't think it's just the soft voice or the smirk. I think it is the absolutely pathetic, gutless New Zealand media. I've travelled to New Zealand fairly extensively as well, and every time I'm there, I am shocked by just how pitiful and weak their media is. Everything she says is uncritically accepted. There's no scrutiny. And you know what? There should be, because she has absolutely failed to fulfil her promises, whether it was building projects, whether it was about immigration.
And she's breaking international law too on this, Rita. But look, we will continue this discussion. Congratulations on your new show, Rita, too. I'm really looking forward to watching it. That was Sky News Australia presenter Rita Panahi. Time now, though, to reveal today's greatest Briton and Uni and Jackass. My superstar panel back with me. Carol Malone, who are you nominating as your greatest Briton tonight?
By the way, I'm loving Rita. We love Rita. Anyway, my greatest Briton is Caitlyn Jenner, as you said, the world's most famous trans woman. She's said tonight, very bravely, I think, that you can't have biological boys competing against women in sport. And this is all to do with Leah Thomas, the trans woman in the US, who was winning all the swimming events by a mile. Anyway, she's just saying it's not fair.
Very good nominee.
Whatever.
Benjamin Butterworth, your nomination.
Mine is Jack Monroe, the food poverty campaigner, who's been incredibly effective. She's been monitoring the costs of the cheapest foods, the most basic foods, over 10 years, and has exposed how the price has risen so much faster than inflation levels. And that has shown just how tough it is for many of the poorest people.
And Esther Kraku, your nomination.
My nomination is everyone that has defended our freedom fighters, our freedom during COVID, and none of the backtrackers. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I never thought we would get to a point where they would actually roll back the restrictions. So I thank the Lord for the people that kept at it,
least
like
we put up a
like
fight.
Oliver.
Well, look, all good nominations, but I'm going to have to go with Carol Malone. Caitlyn Jenner, absolutely. She is my greatest Briton tonight. Uni and Jackass time now. Carol Malone, your nomination quickly.
As Lorena, Labour's deputy leader, she's photographed today coming out of her flat with married shadow minister, a guy called Sam Tarry. Shoelaces untied. He had a toothbrush in his pocket. Rumours about their relationship deepening for a long time. This is the woman who insists my personal life is my personal life. It gets cross when you talk about it. However, she doesn't mind slagging off Boris and everyone else about theirs.
Benjamin Butterworth, your nomination for Uni and Jackass?
My Uni and Jackass is Adele. She cancelled those concerts with 24
Oh my
hours
God, Benjamin,
notice.
I have to play you this clip because it just infuriated me.
I'm so sorry it's been impossible. We've been up against so much and it just ain't ready.
Yeah, well, just tell that to the people who are in Las Vegas. Adele, unable to go. Very quickly, Esther Kraku, your nomination.
Jacinda Ardern. Do I need to elaborate?
No, you don't. And Esther, she is absolutely today's union jackass. You know how to win me over. Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth, Esther Kraku, brilliant superstar panel. I'm back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Thank you for your company tonight. Headliners and this is next.
Good evening. A remarkably similar day tomorrow. It's again going to be cold. If anything, probably feeling a little colder than today. Grey skies for the majority, but not much rain around. Main exception to the dry story will be across the northwest of Scotland, where we do have these weak weather fronts. High pressure has been dominating, and under it we've got a lot of cloud trapped, and it's not really shifting very far because the winds are light. We've seen some breaks in the cloud over northeast England, eastern Scotland, and if we keep those breaks tonight, we could easily see temperatures dropping below freezing. But even where it's cloudy, it's going to turn quite cold. Temperatures dropping down close to freezing zero there in Hull, 1 in Cardiff. A little milder in the far northwest, where there will be some showery rain at times across the Highlands and the Northern Isles. That rain likely to pep up a little bit later on Tuesday. Elsewhere, it's again a rather drab but largely dry day. We should see some breaks in the cloud across Aberdeenshire. Again, northeast England may see a bit of sunshine, but for most it will be a grey day. And temperatures lower than today's. Look at that, only 3 or 4 in Birmingham and London. Again, the top temperature probably Aberdeenshire with some sunshine here, 9 or 10 is possible. A little more rain will trickle southwards across Scotland during the evening, but bar the odd bit of drizzle for Glasgow, not a lot else. A few showers continuing in the far north of Scotland, where it will be breezy, but elsewhere the wind's light. We keep a lot of clouds, and that will help to stop too much frost for Wednesday. Wednesday's a similar day, perhaps a little bit brighter, a better chance of seeing a few glimmers of sunshine. But then also we're going to see a bit more rain coming in across the Western Isles and the Highlands, and that's going to be quite heavy, and that will swing across Scotland during Wednesday evening with strengthening winds as well. So the wind's really getting lively on Wednesday night from this area of low pressure, very blustery in the far north. This weather front moves across the country before high pressure moves back in to bring most of us a dry end to the week.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning